Hello, you're listening to Sending the Experts with Georgina Durrant. This podcast is all about teaching and supporting children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, SEND. My name is Georgina Durrant. I'm the host of this podcast brought to you by Twinkl SEND. As a former teacher in SENDCO myself, I wanted to create a platform to share some of the amazing things that my guests are doing to support learners with SEND. So whether you're listening on your commute, tuning in whilst walking your dog, or curled up on the sofa with a nice cup of coffee, thank you so much for joining us. In this episode, I am really excited to be joined by Kate Griggs. I'm a big fan of hers, as I've just told her. Kate is a proud dyslexic thinker and has dedicated her career to shifting the narrative on dyslexia and educating people on its strengths. She has written 2 best-selling books on dyslexic thinking, published by Penguin, This is Dyslexia and Extraordinary People, and has shared her wealth of expertise in Made by Dyslexia's free training courses for schools and workplaces on Microsoft Learn and LinkedIn Learning. She is one of LinkedIn's top voices and is also the host of the chart-topping podcast, Lessons in Dyslexic Thinking, and the presenter on the University of Dyslexic Thinking Dyslexic U courses. And her innovative approach to social change and advocacy has garnered global recognition. You may have seen her. She's been in major publications, including the BBC Morning Live, This Morning, Harvard Business Review, covering her efforts. And her powerful TED Talk has also inspired countless individuals and organisations to rethink how they perceive dyslexia. So she's making a massive impact in the field of dyslexia. And I'm sure lots of our listeners are well aware of you, Kate, but welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. That was definitely a mouthful, that bio.
I love it when there's a bio like that. It's very, very impressive. So Made by Dyslexia, I'm sure lots of our listeners will have heard of Made by Dyslexia. If they haven't, can you give us a little bit more information about what Made by Dyslexia is?
Yes, sure. We're a global charity, and we're actually the world's largest community of dyslexic people and their allies. Wow. And our vision is a world where dyslexic thinking is recognised as a skill. Yeah. And our mission is to empower it in every home, every school and every workplace. So we launched 8 years ago this month or next month. And we've already seen dyslexic thinking added as a skill on LinkedIn. It's actually a term in the dictionary. And we even have courses on Open University to teach it. So we're definitely shifting the world's perspective, but there's still a lot more to do.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I remember when it came on LinkedIn, that was quite an exciting moment that dyslexic thinking was something you could put on LinkedIn for. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I love that. Really, really brilliant. So we're going to talk about your children's book. What inspired you to write a book for children then? You've done a lot of things in the world of dyslexia. Why write a book about it?
It's the book that I wanted to have to read to my son. Yeah. I mean, that's really what motivated me. I mean, I had a really bad start at school when my dyslexia wasn't spotted, and I felt really, really stupid. And then I was sent age 9 to a school that got dyslexia. They recognised that I was dyslexic. They gave me support for my challenges, but most importantly, they really understood dyslexic thinking skills. Yeah. So my childhood was very much around, okay, you might struggle with these things, we can help you with that, but it's all about what you're good at. And my whole campaigning started really when my son was struggling at school, and I couldn't believe that schools didn't understand this brilliant way of thinking. So I think I know how vital it is that from a very, very early age, you need to tap into the strengths that come with dyslexia, because school is really tough. And these brilliant dyslexic kids are being made to feel stupid because school measures all the things that we find challenging and doesn't measure the things that we're brilliant at. Yeah. And we know that those things are so vital for the workplace. So it's a book to help kids at primary school to really understand that they have brilliant brains that think differently, and they need to just tap into those skills. And in the grand scale of things, they'll be fine. They'll fly.
I love that. I think it's so true as well, because you're right. A lot of, and I've written about it and I've done stuff about it, but there's so much pressure on sort of literacy skills, isn't there, in the processing of literacy within schools at the moment, that you've got to have those literacy skills to be able to show your learning, show what you've managed to achieve in the lessons. And if you're struggling with that side of things, it must be ever so disheartening that you're not able to show your skills and what you're actually capable of doing in a different way.
Yeah, I think it is really frustrating, and even though some dyslexic kids will get grasp reading
Yeah.
with phonics that we now have in schools, some won't, but a lot
Yeah.
will. And it's what happens after that. We're still very aware that it takes us longer to get our thoughts on paper. Spelling tests start at a really young age, times tables, very, very young age. All of those things that fit into a dyslexic child's wheelhouse of challenges, basically. And then, but that's the way we're measuring intelligence. So from a young age, we're giving these kids the message that they're not as smart as everybody else, and they are. And it's so wrong that that's still happening.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. Yeah, with the spelling test and the maths test, those times table tests, like you say, we're sort of, if you're not getting those marks on there, you're sort of telling that child, oh, you're not doing as well in that. Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good point. So this book, and I've got a copy of it next to me, which is brilliant. I love it. Why is it important then for dyslexic people to know what type of extraordinary people they are? And can you give us a bit more information about the types and what you've put in the book?
Yeah, sure. So I think for a lot of dyslexics, because our skills are not really focused on at school, a
Yeah.
lot of dyslexic people just think that the things that they're really good at, everybody's good at,
Mhm.
and they don't realize that actually it's a skill set that is very, very vital in life. So even as adults, a lot of adults arrive in the workplace and they might know that they're dyslexic adults, they might know they're really good at seeing the big picture. So they can kind of see across a huge, vast raft of information and be able to connect the dots or see which is the most relevant bit. And they think that everybody can do that, but that's a real skill set, and dyslexics tend to be exceptionally good at that. It's a skill that a lot of entrepreneurs have, and they might call it a helicopter view, where they're sort of seeing top down approach. And you then you get things like questioning. So in the book, I go through all the different archetypes, the 7 different archetypes, and one of them is a questioner. That was me at school. That was me with my grandmother, and I used to drive my grandmother mad because every time she said to me, "No, well, you just do it because that's the way you do it." I said, "Well, why do you do it like that? Can we not find another way of doing it?" And that can be very frustrating for teachers and often for parents, actually. But it's just a dyslexic child liking to disrupt the status quo and see if there's another way of doing things. Or you have people who dyslexics tend to have really good emotional intelligence, so they can read people, and they can understand. They have a lot of empathy with others, so they're very good at making friends, but also rallying people. They become very good leaders in later life. They're often carers and nurses and all of those incredible professions that you need to have that empathy and emotional intelligence. So it's important to let kids know at a very young age that those are really vital skills. And to be honest, they're far more important than being able to spell correctly.
Absolutely.
And then we've got movers, who are like the fidgets. I know you get a lot of dyslexic kids who don't have ADHD, they're just fidgets. And so they don't need any special help or medication. They just need to be able to learn to focus and move when they need to move. But they've got these fast brains that are desperately trying to do other things or wanting to get out onto the sports field. And then imaginers are always daydreaming, always have sort of another idea that is popping up and are away in this wonderful fantasy world when you trying to get them to focus on a topic. So the book goes through all of those different characters or archetypes and how it helps them to become successful in life, but also to enable them to understand themselves as well.
I think it's brilliant. I love it. I love the positivity around it. I love the idea of children sitting there and reading it and thinking, that's me, and that's how I
Yeah,
feel
we
I
get
am.
that all the time. It's so lovely. It's
Oh,
really lovely. And from parents too. Suddenly it's the sort of the penny drops and they can see
yeah.
these brilliant kids and all the things they're amazing at.
Yeah, and just to see it in a positive way as well. And I know that's a lot of what you're a very positive person. And when I've seen you on TV and you talked about it, you're very, very positive in the way you talk about dyslexia. But we need more of that, don't we? Because, like you say, otherwise the impacts on children's self-esteem, etc. It's huge, and it's really, really important that we're doing that. How did you come up with the 7 types then? Was it from people you knew? Was it a lot of research? How did you work out the 7 sort of types of extraordinary people?
Lots and lots of research went into it. I work really closely with a team of educational psychologists and teachers, dyslexia specialists, and my own experience and all of the research that I'd done with kids and adults as well with dyslexic thinking. And we looked at how does the adult framework show up in kids and work. There's a lot of research went into to bring those characters to life or those archetypes to life.
And maybe you should do an adult version as well, where adults can put themselves in there as well.
Well, there is. I have got the adults book. This is Dyslexia. That does talk about adults dyslexic thinking, and that's across everything we do and all of our workplace research. But actually, the number of adults who get the book to read to their child and then recognise themselves at school is really, really lovely to read as well.
And when we're talking about adults supporting children who are dyslexic or dyslexic children, what are your advice? Because a lot of our listeners are either parents or they're teachers, working with children with SEND. If they're listening now and they're thinking, right, I know I've got some dyslexic children in the class, or I don't know because of diagnosis and they don't know they've got dyslexic children in the class, but they probably will do. What would your advice be for them in terms of supporting these children in the best way possible?
I think the most important thing is that the struggles are real with dyslexia. We're never saying that isn't the case. And it's really important to have patience and understanding when dyslexic kids are struggling at school. But it's as important or more important to focus on the things that they're good at, because there's research from Harvard that says for every negative comment, it takes 5 positive comments to actually remove that negativity. So I think it's really important that we do find success for these kids and help them to understand the strengths. Because from that, you build perseverance, you build self-esteem, all of those things that we know are absolutely vital for our kids to be able to really put the graft in to try and do well within the academic system that actually just is not shaped for them.
Yeah.
So I think finding the strengths is absolutely vital, as well as understanding where the challenges are. But I think the most important thing is not to shy away from spotting a dyslexic child. And not everybody is going to be able to afford to have an assessment, and not everybody needs to have an assessment to actually get the help that they need. If you see a child who has a mismatch between what they seem able to communicate or talk to you about versus what their output is on paper, you know that you're likely talking to a dyslexic child. So learn as much as you can about it. And there are simple things that you can put in for a child that will help them in the classroom. And actually what's good for dyslexic children is really good for all children. It's just understanding your child's pattern of strengths and challenges and making sure that you lean into those. Yeah. And the wonderful thing that's happening in the workplace now is that workplaces are recognizing that dyslexic thinking is valuable. And there's a lot of work happening that we're doing with big global organizations like Cisco and Virgin and Microsoft. But also what we're seeing across all workplaces is skills-based hiring. So people are being hired for the things that they're good at, recognizing that we actually need specialists in the workplace, not generalists.
Yeah.
And as AI is starting to do a lot of work, and certainly removing a lot of barriers for dyslexic people, it really is the skills that are so vital. So I think we need an education system really that is looking more at that skills. Let's find out what kids are good at and really help them to thrive, whether you're dyslexic or not.
Yeah.
So it is leaning into those skills.
Yeah, no, it really is. I think that's really, really important. And what are your dyslexic strengths then? So when you've spoken about yourself, you told us your sort of which area you felt you fit into in the book, but what are your dyslexic strengths? What would you highlight them as?
I'm definitely a questioner. If somebody tells me something isn't possible, I have to prove them wrong. And I have been like that from a very young age. I don't like the status quo. I don't think it needs to exist. I think anything is possible if you really believe in it and put in the effort and build the right team around you. Yeah. I think one of the characters in the books is as storytellers. I think I'm really good at communicating, being able to look across a lot of information and understand which bits are important. And I think everything we do as a charity is very much focused on communicating as dyslexics do and as we like to receive information. So get to the point quickly, keep things simple. So I think that's one of my skills. And I hope I'm a good people. I've definitely got an amazing team of dyslexic thinkers. I think everybody now on my team is dyslexic. So we have a brilliant team of people. We work really well together. We know who's better at what and how to delegate and really work as a team. So I think those are probably simplifying and communicating and enjoying disrupting things and righting wrongs.
Yeah, and that's so needed, isn't it, as well? We need more children to be doing that as they're growing up and
We do. We absolutely do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really exciting. And last one then, what, because you've spoken so positively about dyslexia, and we mentioned a little bit, obviously it does cause problems for some children. What were the challenges you faced with your dyslexia and how did you sort of overcome them?
I actually learned to read quite easily. I have a big brother who's dyslexic, and he was getting extra tuition at home, and my mum sat me in when he was learning to read. So I was absorbing everything. So reading wasn't a problem for me.
Yeah.
However, comprehension, it takes me much longer to read things than most people. So that was always a struggle. Anything that was timed at school, times, tests, exams, I was just terrible at because I never finished. And I think maths was my really, really horrible thing at school. I hated the times tables. I still don't know them today. And so much so that I had at my first school, I had a teacher who always, I'm sure she didn't call on me more than anybody else, but in my mind she did. And she would always ask me to recite my times tables, and I just didn't know them. And it actually, for a long time, it left me with a phobia of public speaking. I would literally just want to be in the background at school, nobody noticing I was there, so I wouldn't be called out to read aloud or do any times tables. So I think those were probably my worst things at school. And it's still, well, now we have AI, so reading for me now, I had a situation the other day where I had to compare two really lengthy reports. And that would have taken me probably the best part of a day to read them all and then see where there was overlap, see which bits I needed to pull out. But AI is phenomenal because you can put both of them in there, ask them all the questions, where do they agree, where do they disagree? And then you get this fantastic readout within seconds that you can then use to really innovate and dig deeper. So I think it's the AI world is phenomenal for dyslexic people.
I think AI is really exciting, isn't it? I think for all children with SEND in particular, dyslexia probably even more so, but I think the opportunities there are really, really exciting. It's interesting what you said about public speaking though, and how the times tables affected the testing you on the spot on times table affected you with public speaking. When you see you now as that's part of your role, that's quite interesting.
Well, I had to get over it because I knew that if I wanted to do what I needed to do, I had to get better at public speaking. Yes. So I just set myself the worst possible goal you could have for a public speaker, which was to do a TED Talk.
Nice.
And I think if I can do that, I can do anything. So I just sort of practiced. And once I'd done, everybody gets nervous when they go on stage, but I literally, my knees would knock and I would sweat. It was that bad. I hated it. I had absolute phobia about it, but yeah, it's something that's really, really common. Actually, I was talking to Princess Sarah Zaid, who's on our podcast this week, and she had exactly the same problem. She was asked to do a reading at school, and she had to say, it was in church, and she had to say the word Nebuchadnezzar. Is that the right way of pronouncing it? Anyway, she did that on a church pulpit with everybody looking at her reading a passage and got it completely wrong. And it made her feel exactly the same way. So it's very common for dyslexic people to carry that a long way, which is why it's so important for teachers to just recognize they have so much power to make these kids feel brilliant, and that's what they really need to do.
Yeah, and the impact of not making them feel brilliant, not just on, I don't think teachers would realize the impact on a times table, times table check, doing that, and how that could impact later in life on somebody's ability to do public speaking, for example. It's those impacts that go out, isn't it, and keep going.
There's in my podcast, I ask every single guest, I ask what they think their 7-year-old self would think about what they're doing now, and without exception, every single dyslexic person cries at that point. Even I spoke to the mayor of New York, and I did a Lessons in Dyslexic Thinking podcast live with him in New York, and he literally choked up when he got to that point. Everybody does, because when you're 7 years old as a dyslexic kid at school, everything around you is about failure. It's about, you can't read as fast as, you can't do the spelling test, you can't do the exams. It's all about failure. And you think you're useless. And I think that's why we are so determined to flip that conversation and help these kids to realize how brilliant they are, because they shouldn't be made to feel like that anymore.
Absolutely not. Oh, thank you. That's been really, really interesting. I've been so excited about speaking to you, Kate. I really
appreciate it. Thank you.